Thanks everybody for joining today. Appreciate you coming on. My name is Norton with Scripture Notes, and with us today is David Hawking. He is an individual I met at a conference, a couple of conferences over the last few years. And he was born and raised in Massachusetts and has a degree in electronics engineering. He was part of a Young Ambassadors group as a guitarist. He served a mission in England. He's been, and while he was there, that was where you were part of the Young Ambassadors group, right, David?
Not on my mission. The Young Ambassadors came from BYU, and
okay.
It was a play on the fact, Brigham Young University, the Young Ambassadors, the ambassadors for BYU.
Got it. But then on your mission, didn't you also do a little singing?
Yeah, we had a group called the Family Portrait Singers and a program we called the Traveling Family Home Evening. And
cool.
So I was in that. Yep.
And if, for those of you that weren't here for our pre-show, David is also a world-renowned hemoglobin disorder expert. And so we were talking briefly about that. He also has a degree in microbiology and chemistry. And looks like you were at Baylor College of Medicine as a virology researcher. And so you've got quite the background, and yet you've found time to study some of these ancient documents that have been found, and have written some annotated books about them. And so we're excited to hear from you today, David.
Okay, so now we have here a revelation that was given to Joseph Smith in March of 1835. And it's in Doctrine and Covenant. It says, "Behold, here is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, and a prophet, having all of the gifts of God, which he bestows upon the head of the church." Now, that is important because previously, of course, he had been receiving lots of revelations. So here in 1835, he's being told that he's going to be everything. He's going to be a prophet, seer, and revelator, and a translator. So in 1832, in the Evening and Morning Star, he states the following. He says, "It may be well to observe here that the Lord greatly encouraged and strengthened the faith of his little flock, which had embraced the fullness of the everlasting gospels revealed to them in the Book of Mormon, by giving some more extended information upon the scriptures, a translation of which had already commenced." So what he's referring to there is that part of his calling was that he was going to be going through the Old and New Testament and making revisions on it. What we call the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible. The Lord calls it the New Translation. The Reorganized Church calls it the Inspired Version. But that is what he's referring to. He says, "Much conjecture and conversation frequently occurred among the saints, occurring the books mentioned and referred to in various places in the Old and New Testaments, which were now nowhere to be found. The common remark was, they are lost books, but it seems the Apostolic Church has some of these writings, as Jude mentions or quotes the prophecy of Enoch, the seventh from Adam." I should point at this point, make a point here, is that this writing is in 1832. Actually, he finished the Joseph Smith translation, we call it, of the Bible in July of 1833. A lot of members think that he did not complete it, but he did. And so here we are in August, near the end of August, near the end of August in 1832, where he's already well into the New Testament, because now he's talking about St. Jude. "So to the joy of the little flock, which in all from Colesville to Canandaigua, New York, numbered about 70 members, did the Lord reveal the following doings of olden times from the prophecy of Enoch." Now, he gets the prophecy of Enoch. We call that the writings of Moses, or the visions of Moses, in the Book of Moses. And that was revealed to him at the end of November and December of 1830. He was only about 25 years of age. And I ask yourself, what were you doing at the age of 25? I know what I was. I was just getting married. I had just completed my schooling at BYU. And I had no clue about what I would do with anything to do with the Old Testament and the Book of Enoch, other than the fact that I took a class from Hugh Nibley, and it was the senior topics of religion. And what he was describing in that whole semester was Enoch. So anyways, I was learning a little bit about it back then. But do you think that Joseph was researching Enoch, or do you think he received an authentic revelation that can be validated by later records? So Jared Halverson, he's with the Joseph Smith papers. He described how Joseph received Moses 6 and 7. Now, he is he was a professor at BYU, still is. He worked on the Joseph Smith papers. I had a video here, but it's a little lengthy, so I just only have a picture of who he looks like. But his statement is the vision of Enoch in Moses chapters 6 and 7 is a Mozart masterpiece. It's just like write as fast as you can because it's coming. What he's referring to is that Mozart, when he did his symphonies, he didn't do any corrections. He would write it all out and there'd be no cross-outs or marks or changes. And that's exactly what he saw. That is Jared Halverson, when he was given the opportunity to see the original manuscripts that were in the handwriting of Sidney Rigdon. And when he looked at the visions of Moses, chapters 6 and 7, there were no corrections or additions or cross-outs. So it was a pure revelation that was given to Joseph at the end of 1830. Now, in March of 1835, as I say, he gets this revelation that he's going to be a prophet, and revelator, and translator. And in that same revelation, which is D&C 107, the Lord says, these things were all written in the book of Enoch and are to be testified of in due time. That is after 1835, because this is when that revelation was given. So if I was Joseph, I would ask the Lord, but Lord, you just already gave me the book of Enoch, because it's in the writings of Moses. It's the vision of Moses. It's Moses chapter 6 and 7. That's what we refer to it as. However, it is in the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, or the inspired version that the Community of Christ has. It's in the book of Genesis, but we have it in the book of Moses. And so it was 4 years after he had received this. And of course, those chapters 6 and 7 are what we call fragments. These chapters are part of a whole group of fragments, including even the Book of Mormon, because it's an abridgment of the record of the people of Nephi and the Lamanites. And of course, Mormon, the editor, is taking all of those records in the large plates, and he's amending them and using them as his source material in his plates of Mormon. And also includes an abridgment taken from the Book of Ether that Moroni did. So these are fragments as well. Matthew chapter 24 is an extract that he sees in a vision while he's translating the Bible. It's called the Little Apocalypse. We've got, of course, the Book of Abraham that's written by his own hand upon papyrus. That's Abraham writing that. And Joseph Smith gets those fragments in that Egyptian mummy in 1835. And of course, we have the Pearly Great Prize, which is the visions and writings of Moses. And these writings are abbreviated and only a sampling, but they are large enough to be compared to other ancient writings that claim similar authorship that can be used to test the validity of Joseph Smith receiving these revelations. So if we look at what Joseph had, and you and I had, or anybody had back in that day, all we could learn about Enoch was in 3 passages, one in the Old Testament and 2 in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, it's in Genesis chapter 5, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. We also read in the letters of Paul, his epistle, he says, by faith, Enoch was translated. And again, he's referencing Jude in verses 14 and 15. Enoch was the 7th of Adam. Behold, the Lord will come with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon all. So this is all we learn about Enoch in the Bible. So on the left here, I have a page from the annotated edition of the Book of Enoch that I did that has a chronology of text, of Enoch text. And so number 1, number 2, you'll see it on that upper left there. I have listed on the right the number ones and number all the way to number 5. So number 1 means that's the Genesis reference in Genesis 5. Enoch lived 60 and 5 years. And then between 62 and 66 AD, we have those 2 references in Hebrew and in Jude. Then in number 3 is in 1773. That's when this explorer. Now I have a picture or an etching of who he would look like. That's James Bruce there in that page of my book. He is from Scotland, and he went down to see the source of the Nile River in a place called Abyssinia. Now it's called Ethiopia. And he comes back with these Enoch texts written in this language called Ge'ez, which is an ancient South Semitic language. He had 3 copies of it, and he gave one to the Bodleian Library in England, Cambridge, England. And he gave another to the library in Paris, and he kept one for himself. But he couldn't read it because it was in this Ge'ez language. But it wasn't until 1821 that a person by the name of Richard Lawrence, who could understand and read Ge'ez, translated it. We call it the Ethiopic Enoch. It's now called First Enoch, or because other ones come later, and there'll be another Enoch coming. They'll be called Second Enoch, and another one found. It'll be called Third Enoch. But it is a single manuscript. It was housed in the Bodleian Library, and it was not in book form. So that's the timeline. And then in 1830, I haven't read there in number 5. That's when Joseph receives his revelation about Enoch, and that's in chapters 6 and 7. Also, chapter 8 is a lot about Noah, and each one of these texts, by the way, has Noah fragments. So it covers the same information that's in these books of texts of Enoch, although Enoch is not in chapter 8 of Moses. So these revelations that he received, again, is in the writings of Moses. It's also in the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible in the book of Genesis. So again, we have to go back to this statement by the Lord that was given in Doctrine and Covenants, section 107. These things were all written in the book of Enoch and are to be testified in due time. So what happens after 1835 is very intriguing. So in 1840, Elder Parley P. Pratt, he's reviewing the 1838 now published the Book of Enoch, the Prophet, by Lawrence in the inaugural edition of the Millennial Star, Volume 1. That's when he lived in Manchester, England. And that was published in 1840. I'll show you a picture of that in the next slide. Then in the same year, 1840, the English translation of the Sefer HaYasher, that means the Book of Jasher, that's published in 1840, and chapters 3 and 4 are about Enoch. Then in 1886, the Slavonic Enoch was discovered in the Belgrade Public Library in Moscow. That particular text was translated in English in 1895 by Richard Morfill. Then in 1912, the R.H. Charles edition of First Enoch was published, and that is the edition that I'm using in the book. And it's the edition that I learned about when I was in the class with Hugh Nibley when he was describing all of the Enoch texts. Then in 1928, Hugo Odeberg collects fragments of many Hebrew writings, and he produces the Sefer Hekalach, which is the book of the heavenly luminaries, and that's what we call Third Enoch. And then lo and behold, in 1952, when they were going through the Dead Sea Scrolls and they were finding all these fragments, there was an Aramaic fragment of Enoch, and it was discovered in 1952, and it was translated in English in 1974. So what's important about this one slide is that prophecy that was given to Joseph Smith, that these things were all written in the book of Enoch and are to be testified in due time, will be what this webinar is all about. how these additional books that came after that revelation support the revelation that Joseph received as a pure revelation in 1830. So if we look at the Book of Mormon, the Book of Mormon has an oblique reference to it in Isaiah chapter 29. The Book of Mormon, if you want to call it, was discovered in 1827 in New York. It's translated in 1829 and then published in New York in 1830. Now, the Book of Jasher is similar in that it has references in Joshua chapter 10 and in 2 Samuel chapter 1. And it was discovered in Jerusalem in 70 AD during the siege of Jerusalem, or the destruction of Jerusalem. That's the time when the Jews were scattered. It got translated in English in 1839 in Liverpool, and got published in New York in 1840. And that was 10 years after the Book of Mormon. And another way to look at it is the Book of Mormon was 10 years before the Book of Jasher. So this is the frontispiece of the 1625 Hebrew printing of the Sefer Yahashar that was done in Italy. And what does it mean? Sefer is book, Ha means the, and Yashar is not a person, it's not a prophet, it's the upright. And it means the book of of righteousness. And so the uprights are the Hebrew prophets Enoch, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, which is same as Israel, Joseph of Egypt, Moses, and Joshua, and they are the righteous ones. So if we look at that reference in Joshua, then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day that when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children, and he said to the sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. So if we compare that to Jasher, it looks about the same. And then in Joshua, it says, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed. And it says, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies, is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of the heavens and hasted not to go down a whole day. And there was no day like that before or after it, that the Lord had hearkened in the voice of man. So now if we go back to Jasher, this is chapter 88. Let's compare what it looks like in Joshua. And in Jasher, it says, until the nation shall have revenged itself. Whereas in Joshua, it's until the people had avenged themselves. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Joshua, and the sun stood still, and in the midst of the heavens, and they stood still for 36 moments. So this is critical, because here we're seeing that the sun is standing still, and the moon also stood still and hastened not to go down a whole day. So that's important, because we're going to bring this up in the Book of Mormon, because this fragment is actually in the Book of Mormon. And I'll show that to you. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened to the voice of man. Okay, and another one. So now we're going to go into the book of Jasher. Again, we're going to refer to the sun stood still, the midst of heavens, and it stood still for 36 moments. And here we get in the book of Helaman. This is Mormon's editorial comment. Yea, and if he say unto the earth, move, it is moved. Yea, and if he say unto the earth, thou shalt go back, that it lengthen out the day for many hours, it is done. And thus, though according to the word, the earth goeth back, and it appears unto man that the sun stands still. Yea, and behold, this is so. Surely it is the earth that moveth, and not the sun. So if we look at this, the sun is standing still. Here we see the sun standing still. Here we see it's standing still for 36 moments, and here we see it's there for many hours. Whereas in the book of Joshua, you don't see that at all. So here we have actually a bullseye in the Book of Mormon, indicating that perhaps in the plates of brass, they had the book of Jasher in it, or referencing to it, and it's more accurate. And so I have found an actual fragment of the book of Jasher in the Book of Mormon. Also, we see David bade them teach the bow, teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it's written in the book of Jasher. And here we see in Jasher, and Jacob said unto Judah, I know, my son, that thou art a mighty man for thy brethren. Reign over them, and thy sons shall reign over their sons forever. Only teach thy sons the bow and all weapons of war, in order that they may fight the battles. So I had mentioned that there was the first edition of the Millennial Star, and that's what it looked like. Parley P. Pratt was the editor, and I've highlighted there in a red text box the Apocryphal Book of Enoch. We have now in our possession a book, the title page, which reads as follows: The Book of Enoch, the Prophet, an apocryphal production. And it's supposed for ages to have been lost, but discovered in the close of the last century in Abyssinia, now first translated from the Ethiopia manuscript in the Bodleian Library by Richard Lawrence. So there you have it. So that's what it looked like. So he was the first, Parley was the first to actually read this Ethiopic text for the first time, and he references it, and he has a lot of comments that he has in that Millennial Star. Excuse me. So in the Doctrine and Covenants in section 91, this was given on March 9th of 1833. And this is important because the prophet was at that time engaged in translation of the Old Testament using his 1828 Finney Bible, which had the Apocrypha in it. A lot of people don't realize back in that era, all of the Protestant Bibles had the Apocrypha. And then they stopped doing it. It was the Catholic Bibles that had it at the time, and still have it. In fact, I have the Catholic Bible, and it's really nice to read these books. But back then, Joseph Smith was using his 1828 Finney Bible, which had the Apocrypha. So he had completed Revelation by March, and now he wanted to go back and do the Apocrypha. So he inquired of the Lord and got this. He says, the Lord says, concerning the Apocrypha, there are many things contained therein that are true, and it is mostly correct, translated correctly. But there are many things contained therein that are not true, which are interpolations by the hands of men. And we can say this to be true of both the Old and New Testaments. That's why we have the Joseph Smith translation. There are a lot of interpolations of men in the King James Version of the Bible. Then he goes on, verily I say unto you that it is not needful for the Apocrypha should be translated. Therefore, whosoever readeth it, let him understand, for the Spirit manifesteth truth, and whoso is enlightened by the Spirit shall obtain benefit therefrom. So I'm going to show you that these apocryphal books of Enoch and the Book of Jasher are many things true in them, and there are also many things that are not. So although chapters 2 through 8 in the Book of Moses and the Pearl of Great Price are entitled The Writings of Moses, Joseph did not indicate that he ever had a manuscript in his hands. In fact, he was sitting at a table, and Stigney Rigdon was to the right of him with the pen and paper, and Joseph did not use the Urim and Thummim. He had nothing in front of him. He just had a pure revelation. And so he received these writings in that manner. So these revelations then act as his claim to be a seer and revelator. How? Because these later Enoch manuscripts or fragments, if we want to refer them to them as, they became available that support those revelations, and they would validate his claims as a revealer. Hugh Nibley stated, and I remember this because I was in his class, the only really valid test of the authenticity of an ancient record, which does not depend on the writing materials used, nor the language in which it was written, nor the method of translation, but simply asks this question: how does it compare with other records known to be authentic? It offers the nearest thing to a perfectly foolproof test, neat, clear-cut, and decisive, of Joseph Smith's claim to be a revelator. So this is a look at my cover of the book and the title, my table of contents. You'll see that I have the Ethiopic Enoch, first Enoch, the Slavonic Enoch, second Enoch, the Hebrew Enoch, third Enoch. I also include the Book of Moses, the Book of Jasher, and in the appendix, a whole bunch of other stuff, including the legends of the Jews and the Aramaic. So the Ethiopic, Slavonic, and Hebrew books of Enoch show a mark of authenticity as each repeats similar themes. The Book of Jasher also establishes itself as an authentic ancient record as it also repeats many of those same themes. So what I'm going to show you are side-by-side comparisons of just a sampling of selected parallel passages. In the book, I have 15 pages of double columns of the comparisons. And actually, I could have gone on and on, but I chose, I can consider some of the highlights, but since I've got the book published, I found many more. But I'm going to take it from first and second and third books of Enoch, the book of Jasher, and the book of Moses, and I'm going to show you the comparisons. So the many passages shown are from sources far removed from each other in time and place. These passages demonstrate that ancient texts have been preserved throughout thousands of years and substantiates consistency of the stories told. Importantly, they validate the revelations that Joseph Smith received and solidify his credentials as the prophet, seer, and revelator. So here's the first page on the Ethiopic. And the words of the blessing of Enoch, you can see off to the left here. And I've got in bold in the red box, Enoch, I, Enoch, am a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens. That's in verse 2. Now compare that to Moses 6:35. Anoint thine eyes. This is the Lord speaking to Enoch with clay, and wash them, and thou, Enoch, shall see. So here we have Enoch having his eyes opened. And so that's a bullseye. So off to the left, I have the book of Moses passages, and off to the right, I have the first Enoch, which was done in 1838. Of course, the book of Moses was done in 1830. So in Moses 7, we get the Lord showed Enoch all things even unto the end of the world. And then here we've got Enoch alone saw the vision of the ends of all things. In Moses 6:37, and it came to pass that Enoch went forth in the land among the people standing upon the hills and the high places. And in first Enoch, we see they brought me to a place of darkness and to a mountain whose summit reached to the heavens. Moses 7 again, we got, wherefore I can stretch forth my hands and hold all the creations which I have made, and my eye can pierce them also. That's the Lord speaking. And then Enoch says in Enoch chapter 9, he knows before the world was created what is forever. We're going to continue. Again, the book of Moses, 1830, 1831, Moses, Satan said unto Cain, swear unto me by thy throat, and if thou tell it, thou shalt die, and swear thy brethren by their heads and by the living God, that they tell it not. So in Enoch, we have Satan, who is their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed he agree to this deed, and alone I shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, let us swear by an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. And again in Moses chapter 6, we have, wherefore teach it unto your children that all men everywhere must repent, or they can no wise inherit the kingdom of God, for no unclean thing can dwell therein. In his presence, or in the language of Adam, man of holiness is his name. And the name of his only begotten is the Son of Man. And in Enoch, we get in that hour, the Son of Man was named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits. And the Lord of Spirits in the book of Enoch is Heavenly Father. Again, in 1830 to 1831, we get this, the Moses chapters. And what we get here, came to pass that the Lord spake unto Enoch and told Enoch all the doings of the children of men, wherefore Enoch knew of their doings and looked upon their wickedness and their misery and wept. And he wept over his brethren. And in second Enoch, now this is the Slavonic, this was done in 1896. And I saw all the forefathers, that's his brethren. And from the time of Adam and Eve, who was Eve, and Enoch sighed and broke into tears. Woe is me for my infirmity and for that of my forefathers. In Moses 1, we see in that day, when the children of men shall esteem my words as not, many of them shall be from the book which thou shalt write. Now, this is Moses is going to write this, but again, Enoch is going to be asked to do the same thing. In second Enoch, apply your mind, Enoch, and know him who is speaking to you, and take thence the books which you yourself have written. So both of them are being asked to record these things. So in the book of Moses, we have, and it came to pass that the God in heaven looked upon the residue of the people and he wept. So now we have God weeping. And Enoch said unto the Lord, how is it that thou canst weep, seeing that thou art holy? And in third Enoch, now this is the one that was done in 1928. In that moment, the right hand, which is the Almighty, was weeping. And there went forth from its 5 fingers 5 rivers of tears, and fell down upon the great sea and shook the whole world. When God wept over the destruction of the temple, Enoch fell on his face and said, I will weep, but weep not thou. God answered and said, if thou wilt not suffer me to weep, I will go whither thou canst not come, and there will I lament. I mean, that's a pretty strong correlation. And again, you look at 1830 to 1928, there was nothing for Joseph to even think, if he was to make this up on his own, to come up with this concept. But there it is. It's in black and white. You can read it right there. Moses chapter 7, Satan came among them saying, I'm also son of God. And he, Satan, commanded them saying, believe it not. And they believed it not. And they, who are the children of Adam and Eve, loved Satan more than God. And in third Enoch, and he answered and said to me, because I am Enoch, the son of Jared, for when the generation of the flood sinned and were confounded in their deeds, saying to God, depart from us, for we desire not to know the knowledge of thy ways. They loved Satan more than God. And in Moses 6, why is it that I, Enoch, have found favor in thy sight, and but a lad? And in third Enoch, my king calls me youth. Why did they call thee youth? So we get a lad and youth. Again, these are bullseyes. I'm now going to go into the book of Jasher, which was done in 1840. So if you look at Moses, came to pass that they heard Enoch, no man laid hands on him, for fear came on all them that heard him, and people trembled. And in first Enoch, I spoke to them. They were all afraid and fear and trembling. So we see that in Enoch. That's the one in 1838. Now we're into Jasher. And all the sons of men were greatly afraid of Enoch, and they feared to approach him, fearing that he might be punished and die. Now, if we get into Moses 7, it says, and Enoch and all his people walked with God, and he dwelt in the midst of Zion. It came to pass that Zion was not, for God received it up in his own bosom, and from thence went forth the saying, Zion is fled. And in Enoch, and this is the Ethiopic, and in those days a whirlwind carried me off from the earth and set me down at the end of the heavens. And in Jasher, Enoch went forth, and all the sons of men went after him, about 800,000 men. And after he ascended into heaven in a whirlwind, the men who had been remained with him were also missing. Zion is fled. Finally, in Hebrew, Enoch, we have the third Enoch. It says, in every command that Enoch utters to you in my name, do you observe and fulfill? For the prince of wisdom and the prince of understanding have I committed to him to instruct him in the wisdom of heavenly things and of earthly things, in the wisdom of the world and of the world to come. And in first Enoch, we see the same thing, the second vision, which he saw, the vision of wisdom, which Enoch, the son of Jared, saw. And this is the beginning of the words of wisdom, which I lifted up my voice to speak. And over in Jasher, when at the time Enoch heard this, he went and assembled all the inhabitants of the earth and taught them wisdom and knowledge and gave them divine instruction. He said to them, I have been required to ascend into heaven. I therefore do not know the day of my going. Now, therefore, I will teach you wisdom and knowledge. And Moses, so powerful was the word of Enoch, and so great the power of the language which God had given him. So if we look at what I said before about the section in Helaman, if I break it down in the following fashion, you'll find this to be very fascinating. So off to the left is a page from the annotated edition of the Book of Mormon, and I've got in the red box statement by Samuel the Lamanite. And that statement is in the following. It says, for your desolation is already come upon you, and your destruction is made sure. And I've labeled that A. Yea, in that day you shall say, oh, that we had remembered, which is B, that the Lord our God, which is C, in the day that he gave us our riches, D, for behold, our riches, E, are gone from us, F. So now if I come back and look over at Enoch, chapter 94, verses 8 and 10, and Enoch the prophet said, woe to you, you have ye rich, for you have trusted in your riches, that's E. You shall depart from your riches, you shall depart, that's F. You have not remembered, B, the Most High, which is the same thing as God, C, in the days of your riches, which is the same as D. And your Creator will rejoice at your destruction, A. So it's really almost chiastic in a way, but you can see that those elements that are in the book of Helaman are all found in the book of Enoch. So I propose that what was in the plates of brass and what was part of the culture and the history of the Nephites and the Lamanites, that they had this information, and therefore it was easy for Samuel the Lamanite to recall that. So I think that's pretty powerful. I can also just say the same thing for Paul the Apostle, because in his epistle in the Hebrews, chapter 4, he says, neither is there any creature that is not manifested in his sight, but all things are naked and opened unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do. When I read that, I said, I've seen that before. So I went back, and sure enough, in 1 Enoch chapter 9, all things are naked and open in thy sight, and thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. So obviously that phrase in Enoch, having that uniqueness of naked and open, that phrase had to do with the manuscript that was available to Paul, because he is in essence paraphrasing that. In the book of Revelation, actually the book of Enoch has a lot in common with the book of Revelation. Here's an example in Revelation chapter 4. Off to the left, I have, this is my newest book I'm working on. I'll have it out next year. It's the Joseph Smith translation of the New Testament. It's going to be my annotated edition. And here is a section where it says, behold, behold, the doors open, so forth, and come up hither. And then up here, another box, it says, before the throne, there was a sea of glass. So you've got the word, I looked, it's got the word come up hither. You got a throne, you got crystal. So all of these are found in the book of Enoch. And I looked and saw, and there was a throne, and appearance was like crystal. And come on down, and it says, until then, I, Enoch, had been prostrate on my face, trembling, and the Lord called me with his own mouth and said, come up, come hither, and hear my word. So the vision that John the Revelator had is not too dissimilar to what Enoch had. Also, we see in that same chapter, holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to, so forth. And over here in the book of Enoch, we have the same thing. It says, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. We get the same thing in Isaiah, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. And then, of course, in John, the three holies mean the Holy Father, the Holy Word, which is the Son of God, and the Holy Ghost. And again, in Revelation, John says, and I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and read the book. And then what do we get in First Enoch? And Enoch wept with a great weeping, and I wept and was troubled because I had seen the vision. So again, John the Revelator is seeing similar things and experiencing similar things that Enoch is experiencing. We get in the book of Revelation, some crazy words like the sea of glass, eyes and wings. And so Joseph Smith gets a revelation while he's doing his translation. We get it in Doctrine and Covenants 77. Again, this is in March of 1832. So he is near the end of the book of Revelation during this time. A lot of people feel that he did not complete the Bible, but here it's showing that he is. And so these question and answers are, and when we look at the book of Enoch, they're all found there as well. So the sea of glass, the Lord made the firm waters, say the bottomless, and he made the foundation of light around the water and created 7 circles from inside and imaged the waters like crystal, wet and dry. That is to say, like glass. Eyes and wings. What does that mean? Well, according to here, the cherubim's whole body and their backs and their hands and their wings and the wheels were full of eyes round about, even the wheels which they four had. And that's in Ezekiel and in 3rd Enoch. And his Shekinah's body is full of eyes, and wings are covering the whole of his high stature. So again, we've got a lot of commonality of that. And then, of course, the book, what does it mean by the book that which John saw? And here we get in 1st Enoch, and I understood everything and read the book of all the deeds of mankind. So again, the book that he's referring to is what John's going to write. So I can even continue to get into the book of Abraham. So in the book of Abraham, we have these strange words like what is the kolob, and we've got this thing called kokob, and we've got kokabine, and we've got this moon called Oli. So what do we get in the book of Enoch? We've got Kolob is the great one that's next to the planet where the God lives, and in the book of Enoch, one is larger than the rest. We've got Kokob in the book of Abraham, and Kokabel in the book of Enoch. It's K-O-K again. We got Kokabim, we got Kokbiel, that's in 3rd Enoch, and the moon starts with the O, Oli, and then in 3rd Enoch, we've got Ophaniel, who is over the globe of the moon. So Kokabel taught the constellations in 1st Enoch. Kokbiel is appointed over the planets, and Kokbiel is the angel of the stars, and that's in the legends of the Jews, which I'll get to. So in the book of Jasher, we see that Issachar said, here's an advice for you. If it seemed good in your eyes to do this thing, take the coat which belongeth to Joseph and tear it, and kill a kid of the goats and dip it in its blood and send it to our father. And they hastened and took Joseph's coat and tore it. And they killed the kid of the goats and dipped it in the coat in the blood of the kid, and then trampled it in the dust. And they sent the coat to their father. Now let's look at the Book of Mormon. Again, the book of Jasher is 1840. The Book of Mormon's already out there. It's been published. Moroni said unto them, behold, we are a remnant of the seed of Jacob. Yea, we are a remnant of the seed of Joseph, whose coat was rent by his brethren into many pieces. Yea, and now behold, let us remember to keep the commandments of our God, or our garments shall be rent. And then he said, surely God shall not suffer this, that we who are despised because we take upon us the name of Christ should be trodden down and be destroyed. So the key word is tear or rent. So the term rent is to mean tear, and so we've got the renting and tearing. The coat was rent. Our garments shall be rent, and we've got the trotting and the trampling, and there we have it. I mean, so therefore, how did Moroni know that his coat was rent and was trampled upon? Obviously, the plates of brass must have had additional information that we don't get in our Old Testament. Also in Moses, we get chapter 8, and it came to pass that Methuselah prophesied from his loins should spring all the kingdoms of the earth through Noah, and he took glory into himself, and there came a great famine in the land, and the Lord cursed the earth with a sore curse. And that was given to him in November through February of 1831. And now in 1840, the book of Jasher is published, and the Lord was exceeding wroth against Methuselah and the sons of men, and the Lord continued to destroy the seed in those days, so that there was neither sowing nor reaping in the earth. So again, that's another bullseye that Moses, that he got as a revelation in 1830 that supports the book of Jasher. So finally, I found this. This was at the very end of, I had already completed the book of Enoch. I was preparing for the conference talk out in Sandy, Utah. And I wanted to know if any other people out there had done any research on these editions of the Book of Enoch and compared it to Joseph Smith's Book of Moses. And I found a 2010 master's thesis at Durham University in England by a Salvatore Cirillo. And he cites the available evidence that Smith must have had access to published works related to First Enoch. And he believes this moved beyond probability to an absolute fact. He concludes, I argue that Smith did in fact have access to First Enoch and a variety of other Enoch material that beyond parallels, there are substantial similarities that further argue influence occurred. Now, I have just explained to you that that's impossible. But again, this person felt that he had to have it because there's too many similarities about all of these texts. So, however, reflecting on the coincidence of the appearances of the first Enoch translation of Enoch in 1821, just a few years before Smith received his Enoch revelations, Richard Bushman, who's again an LDS scholar, who's written Rough Stone Rolling and other things, he concludes it's scarcely conceivable that Joseph Smith knew of Lawrence's Enoch translation. In fact, it was in manuscript form. It was not in book form. Perhaps even more significant is the fact that the principal themes of Lawrence's 105 translated chapters do not resemble Joseph Smith Enoch in any obvious ways. So the most striking resemblances to Joseph Smith's writings are in Enoch literature published after his death in 1844. So here's an example. This is from the 1896 Slavonic English translation. It's an account of his ascension to the highest heaven and his initiation into the heavenly mysteries in that celestial realm. At one point, the Lord commands Michael to anoint and clothe Enoch. Now, who is Michael? We know that to be Adam. Now, in one of the revelations that Joseph Smith received, he mentions that Adam is an archangel, and he is Adam. He also mentions that Gabriel was an archangel, and he is Noah. You'll be surprised to read in the Book of Enoch that I published here, is that is also what is taught in the books of Enoch, is that Michael was the chief of all of the angels, followed by Gabriel. And so I find that to be interesting. So anyways, Michael is the one that's going to anoint Enoch, who is Adam. Go and take Enoch and remove his earthly garments and anoint him with my sweet anointment and put him into the garments of my glory. Now, what's interesting is that this is an 1896 English translation of the Slavonic that was discovered in 1880 something. So when did the LDS ceremony come about? Well, that was revealed to Joseph in 1842. So he had no way to come up with this. This is a true bullseye. So as a result of this investiture, Enoch declares, I looked at myself and I was like transfigured, one of his glorious ones. Amazing, amazing. So can we validate Joseph Smith being a revealer of ancient texts? Of course we can. Again, what is that revelation? These things were all written in the Book of Enoch and are to be testified in due time. So Moses chapters 6 and 7, he got those revealed to him in 1830 to 1831. They provide physical evidence. This is not spiritual, this is physical, that Joseph Smith revealed in ancient biblical texts. How so? Because the post-1835 published English Ethiopic 1, which was done in 1838, the Slavonic Second Enoch in 1896, and the Hebrew Enoch in 1928, and the Jasher in 1840, these texts show substantial parallels to those chapters and reveal additional truths as found in the books of Mormon, Abraham, Jasher, and modern Revelation. So it is my testimony from what I have researched that those other books that are spoken of in the Book of Mormon that Nephi refers to are these apocryphal books. They're not scripture. The Revelation doesn't say other scripture is going to come forth, but other books will come forth. And these have come forth. And they are for our learning. They are apocryphal books, and the Lord has stated that there are much truths in them. I have gleaned from those books much truth that substantiates not only the book, but also the book of Abraham. And the book of Jasher and the book of Enoch support each other. All of these books are helpful in understanding that Joseph Smith's role as a revealer of ancient records is a true statement, and I testify of it. I know it to be true. I have a solid testimony of it, and so I bear that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, David. That was really interesting, and I just want to invite people. Well, if you have questions while I talk and ask David a couple of questions, there's been one posted already. If you have a question, go ahead and jot it in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. You can see there's a Q&A chat box, or you can also put it in the chat. So I want to ask a couple of questions, and I'll also share one thing as well that I saw in my recent reading of the Book of Jasher. I just finished listening to that, and in fact, it was interesting today at church. I was speaking with a friend that's in CES. He's an institute seminary teacher, and I mentioned the Book of Jasher, and he said that he hadn't read it. He'd read the Apocrypha before, and I just shared this one thing. I remember I listened to it recently, the last few weeks, because I wanted to understand a little better what was in it in kind of preparation for your presentation. It was kind of cool to see on some of your slides things that I remembered from listening to it. But one of the things that about brought me to tears listening to in my car was the story of Abraham and Isaac, when Abraham gets the revelation that he's got to take Isaac out and sacrifice him after all that he's been through.
Yeah.
And I remember as he's taking Isaac, and Isaac, along the way starts asking him questions and stuff. And he says, it's a 3-day journey. And so he's like, well, so what's this all about, that we're going to go off and do this sacrifice? And where's the offering? And it wasn't at the last minute that Abraham tells him, you're going to be the sacrifice. It was along the way. And I can't remember which day it was, if it was first or second day or whatever, but Isaac rejoiced that he got to be the Lord's sacrifice.
Yep.
And I just thought, oh my goodness, that is not something I always imagined. That must have been the heaviest burden on Isaac. Like, oh my goodness, I have to do this. But, in the book of Jasher, it describes it there as, he was so thrilled that he got to be chosen as the Lord's special offering, because he would have grown up watching his father Abraham and participating in these sacrifices, knowing that we pick the very best of the flock. And, it's got to be up to, a certain standard, and the very best that we offer the Lord. And so he all of a sudden goes through this, oh, you're going to be the sacrifice. And he's so thrilled and excited. And I was just like, wow, it was a real revelation to me to have even the thought that, that could have been what happened. I just thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and plus the poetry that comes across, if you get in the edition that I did, my annotated edition, I show you the beautiful poetry that is throughout all of that time frame, because the love that Isaac had for his mother and his mother for him, and it was so poetic. And like yourself, first time I read it, I actually cried. I was reading it and thinking, wow, this is so powerful. You don't get this in the Old Testament. The language and the flavor of the text of the Book of Enoch is so beautiful. And so anyways, I agree with you. And there's so much more to the Book of Enoch that Jasher I can talk about, but I just want to give you a highlight that in the Book of Jasher, there is the Enoch text, and that was the focus.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So let me post a couple questions here for you from the audience. one, I guess let's just get this out of the way. Where can people get your books? I see, your slide here has Beacon Light Books. Is that where they would order it?
Yeah,
Or
you can type in Beacon Light Books in your Google search, and I have a website. You can buy them online. I also have my email there. If you email me, say I want some books, I can give you. So you can get them through I have my home here in Raleigh, so I can sign them for you because I have the books here. I can also ship them to you. And take not only credit cards, but I also take Venmo and PayPal, and you can send me a check. So however you want to do that, I pay for the shipping. And if you buy more than one book, I'll give you discounts. You don't get that on my website, but if you want to get some of these books and you want, more than one book or whatever, just email me at drhawking. A lot of people call it Dr. Hawking, but drhawking@gmail. And then I'll let you know what they'll cost and when you'll get them, and I'll sign them for you.
Super. Thanks, David. Okay. So here's a couple questions. First question, early on, you mentioned that in the Book of Enoch section on your table of contents, you had like First Enoch, Second Enoch, Third Enoch, but you also mentioned that there was like some fragments in the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found. What are those fragments? Was it enough to constitute like Fourth Enoch? Was it just a parallel of what was already in those?
It's a parallel of First Enoch.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's also a Greek version of the Slavonic in the book as well. It's an extract as well. So a Greek translation of the Slavonic. Think of that. Instead of an English translation, there's a Greek translation. So I have that in there, and I didn't really go into the Legends of the Jews, but that's an important. I have a lot of pages on the Legends of the Jews in the appendix, and why I did that is because this Louis Ginsburg, who's Jewish, a rabbi, who was in Germany. He was before World War I. He collected all of the Haggadah, the Midrash, the Talmud, all of these different Jewish writings, and he created a narrative. So this is his narrative of these writings. And so I took volume 1. It's a 3-volume set, but volume 1, section 3 of his Legends of the Jews is what I have in the Book of Enoch. And it is all about Enoch, and it parallels what you'll read in all of the Enoch texts and in the book of Moses, the writings of Moses, or Joseph Smith Moses, and in the book of Jasher. So there's a lot there as well. One other thing that I have in the appendix, by the way, is unfortunately John Pratt, who Dr. Pratt has written many articles for the Ensign and for other LDS magazines and so forth. He passed away a couple weeks ago. The day before he passed away, the book arrived. I gave him a free book because in the appendix, I have John Pratt's writings about the Enoch calendar. So in the calendar portion, it gets a little hairy when you read it. You go, what in the world am I reading here? It gets a little out there, but John Pratt goes into it. And so that'll be another little bonus that you get with my book is what is this Enoch calendar and how is it comparing to our calendar and why is it there and how accurate is it and what does it really say? It's a great reference for you to look at.
I did not know John had passed away. That's too bad. I have read several of his articles in the past and perused his website and was just fascinated by so many of the astronomical things that he'd discovered and written about it. That's too bad. All right, let's take this next question. Is there any indication of who wrote the Book of Jasher?
No, it's just been handed down. When they got the manuscript, the person who did the translating it from English was Moses Samuel, and he was a Jewish scholar in Liverpool. in my annotated edition, I go into detail about what he writes, why he got involved with wanting to translate it, because he, after looking at it, feeling that it had all the hallmarks of authenticity, he felt that it was to his benefit to go ahead and to start to translate it. And one of the things that he mentioned was the fact that it was without points. Now, without points it'll escape most people, because that refers to a form of Hebrew writing known as the Masoretes. Came up with a point system to introduce vowels in Hebrew writings in the Torah. And so rabbis, when they would recant from the Torah, they would say passages in different meanings. And so they wanted, this is the 10th, 11th century Jews that were living in Jerusalem. They came up with this Masoretic group came up with this point system. So he looked at this manuscript, says without points, meaning it's an ancient record. It's without points, meaning that the Masoretes didn't have it, and so therefore it's ancient. And when it was discovered in a library in Jerusalem behind a false wall, meaning that these manuscripts were sacred to the Jews. And so a rabbi built this wall in this building and hid all of these manuscripts, and he was behind it as well, because he could hear the destruction going around him. And it took a Roman soldier from Spain by the name of Cyrus, who broke down the wall and saw the rabbi along with the manuscripts and so forth. So he took all of those manuscripts back with him as spoils of war to the Iberian Peninsula, which we now know as Spain. And a lot of the Jews were fleeing there. So these manuscripts were in pristine condition, and it finally got to the hands of the group up in England, in Liverpool. So we don't know actually who were the scribes that did it, but it was the Hebrew scribes. When you hear about the scribes and the Pharisees in the New Testament, it was really the scribes that were doing it.
Okay. Here's another question. Someone asks, it appears that a multi-part series titled A Strange Thing in the Land, The Return of the Book of Enoch, and you're probably familiar with this.
Yeah,
I think that was Nibley. Yeah, it was printed in the Ensign between 1975 and 77. Is that focused on First Enoch, or do you know which part that is?
So I had mentioned that I took a class from him in 1975. So what I was listening to for that whole semester was his notes that he would do for that book. So that book got published in 1976. And that book goes into a lot more. The book is called the Enoch the Prophet. And then you can get it now if you go to the I think you can get it through Deseret Book, but it is really what I learned in my semester. And so yes, from that book they then came up with excerpts in the Ensign, and so all of what he does I have in my book, but he does more. There's quite a few other fragments of other writings that he refers to that refer to Enoch as well, and they are just fragments. So I decided not to do all of them because it gets too tedious, but I wanted the ones that were what I call the credentialed ones, meaning that these Ethiopic, Slavonic, and the Hebrew are well known, well published, and therefore I chose that along with the Aramaic and the Legends of the Jews. So I focused on only those three.
Okay. You know, somebody asked here, is there any reference to Raphael in one of, well, I don't know if it's in the Book of Jasher, but specifically the Book of Enoch? I have something here I'll share in a sec, but do you know if there's any reference to that, or
Raphael is throughout the Book of Enoch, the different texts. I have an index. If I look at my index right now and I look at Raphael, how many times does he show up? Let me look here. I may be smart, but I'm not that smart to remember everything. Raphael is in pages 5 all the way through pages 219. So in other words, he's everywhere. So all of the Enoch text mentions Raphael.
Does it mention him as a third person? Because I have I pulled up my notes here when the question just came up, and I have a statement referenced in my scripture notes to Revelation 8:2, where it says, "And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets." And I have a reference to, this is out of McConkey's New Testament commentary.
Right. Yeah.
A reference to the book of Tobit, chapter 12, verse 15,
yeah,
where it says, "I am Raphael, one of the 7 holy angels, which present the prayers of the saints and which go in and out before the glory of the Holy One." And in another reference, I have Enoch is Raphael. Now, I don't remember where I got that particular piece from, but is that your feeling? Is that
no,
the impression that
Enoch is not Raphael? So the first time you'll come up with the word Raphael is in First Enoch chapter 20, and it lists the 8 angels. And Raphael is one of the holy angels who is over the spirits of men. And then there's Michael and there's Gabriel. And we know that Michael is the first, and he's referred to as the foremost and the leader, and then followed by Gabriel. And this is what Joseph Smith said, was that Michael is an archangel and he was Adam, and then followed by Gabriel, who's Noah. So these are mentioned. Now, they don't say Michael is Adam here, nor do they say that Gabriel is Noah, but that's the revelation that Joseph received. So as you read the text of Enoch, you'll be able to, make the connection. And in fact, there's another book called the Ascension of Isaiah. In the Ascension of Isaiah, the 2 angels that stood by the sepulcher when in the tomb, in the Ascension of Isaiah, it's Michael and Gabriel. So it's Adam and Noah that stood there, according to the Ascension of Isaiah and the revelation that Joseph received, meaning that Michael is Adam and that Gabriel is Noah. That would make sense to me, that those are the premier people. Now, there's other talks. I think you'll get, the Pickertons, Rhonda Pickering, rather. She will say, and I think that maybe even the Stoddards will say that Joseph Smith was one of those angels and the archangels, and he might be one of those names. So who knows?
Could be. I mean, dispensation heads.
Yep. Yep.
It could be that's who they represent. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple more questions here. Let's see. One person asked, "Are you going to be doing the Book of Abraham in some annotated format?" I guess. I think that's what this question is.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much have done it already. It's just getting it published and so forth. But yeah, the Book of Abraham. Actually, I've done virtually everything. As I say, my next project I'll be coming out. I'm pretty much finished with it. Is the Joseph Smith translation of the New Testament. Is my screen still there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take you through.
Maybe you can, while you're pulling up whatever you are, maybe you can also address this. One other person asked about digital copies of your book. Do you have any plans to do digital editions or just these? Well, they're nice. I mean, they're like really high quality.
Yeah. So as you know, I sent you a digital copy of the Book of Jasher as my gift to you because of the work you've done to help me and support me and stuff. The issue that I have with the digital, and I have them all, I have what I call PDF files. So you can put them on a tablet or smartphone, and they're all hyperlinkable. I think, Oak, you've seen that already. I think if you click on things, you'll be able to take you to the internet, show you some of my references. The software that I have is very powerful software. Allows me not only to do the book, but also to hyperlink things so that I can create an ebook. But the ebook is in a PDF format, and I currently don't have a way to protect that file in a way that prevents you from sharing it. And that's the bane of these PDF ebooks, is that it's on an honor system. If I was to send you you were to buy an ebook from me and you have it, you're just going to have to say, this is my copy. You can do it for your own family. You can, whatever your family has, you have 7 kids in them, you can give them to 7 kids. But the problem is, I don't want you to send it everywhere, because now the value that I've got is now been diluted because no one's paying for it. And it's not that I want to get paid all the time. It's just that, that's all I do. I get up early in the morning and I do this day after day, month after month, year after year. I need to get some kind of reimbursement. And so the print book does that for me. And I've hesitated by promoting the ebook, but I do share the ebook judiciously. And as long as people, commit and covenant, if we're covenant people, that they don't share it. And that if somebody else wants to get another copy, they send them to Dave Hawking and I'll provide one for them. I can't do that for the Book of Mormon. And it's because I did not come up with the money or the funding for that book. The Annotated Book of Mormon was my first entree into this work. That's where I got connected with Rod Meldrum and Boyd Tuttle, the publisher from Digital Legends. They, by the way, you can buy my books from them. You can also get them. I am so thrilled, but Costco is selling these books and Deseret Book are selling these books. So having said that, when I want to promote a book, when I say contact me, I'm the only one that can sign the book. Also, when you buy them from me, I get more of the benefit of the sale because I only get pennies to the dollar when you go through Costco or Deseret Book, because they get them at gigantic discounts. And of course, then there's middlemen that get involved. So I can tell you honestly that for every Book of Mormon that's sold, not even one hand's worth of money comes from that, not even a half of a hand. And then when I get into the books of Enoch and Isaiah, I have about one hand's worth of dollars that come from it. So it's not much at all, but it is good because you can buy them locally and you can see it. And so I encourage you to go to these stores and find them. And if you want to buy them, great. But if you want a signed copy, hopefully you'll get them from me, and I'll provide a big discount. And I can provide the discount because I'm not selling them at a point where I'm not making any money. This way I make a little bit more money that way.
Yeah, no, I that's totally understandable.
So, but yeah, so with the ebook, if you want the ebook, let me know. I'll let you know what the price is, but I'm going to make sure that you don't distribute it to all of your friends.
Sure. All right, David, thank you so much. That was really enlightening, and I am excited to get into the Book of Enoch next and take a look closer at what's in that. I haven't done that yet. But I know people are posting some thanks here in the chat. We appreciate your time and sharing that. I did post the link to your website, beaconlightbooks.com, in the chat for anyone interested in getting in touch with you that way and picking up a copy of the books. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, and just 1 second before you leave, this is coming next year. I've got this New Testament of Jesus Christ, which is the Joseph Smith translation. And this will be the 1867 first edition that the organized church did. So it's got a good provenance to it. But this gives you an example of what I'm going to do with it. So all of the Gospels are going to be in double columns with a lot of artwork and, the typical annotated edition style that I have. But then when you get to the letters, you can see off to the right here, they're going to be written like letters. And then all of my commentary will be off to the right. but this will open up all of the scriptural passages, the couplets, the poetry, and so forth. It transforms how you read the epistles. So anyways, look for that next year.
That looks cool. Thanks, David. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for inviting me. I enjoyed giving you an opportunity to see what I've been doing with my life, and hopefully this is beneficial to everyone. Yeah,
I think people appreciated knowing this. So thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And I'll just give you a quick preview. Next month, we're going to have Rob Kay on. He's a Jewish convert to the church, grew up being taught in the way that Jewish kids are. And he's going to talk about a little bit of Hebrew in the Book of Mormon, maybe, and he shared some totally fascinating things with me when I talked with him. But he's going to talk about the manner of learning of the Jews and how we can do that, especially as we go into this Old Testament year. And so I think it's going to be a really cool presentation, and I will be announcing that in an email shortly. So thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you all soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, David. See you.